Alright, hello everyone. So, obvious out of the way, I'm still on the terrible setup. I'm just gonna have to deal with it. This is a live stream. So, hopefully it sounds good enough to where people can understand what I'm saying. By the time I'll have my normal setup, it'll be way too late to do this kind of talk. So I decided, why not? I don't got much to do right now. Let's get it over with. We'll do a stream. I'm going to be going through version 11.2, and I'm going to be talking about the changes in a bit more detail now that we've had time to experiment with them. And we're going to go through it. So, first off, let's talk about NZAP. So, there are a lot of random shooter buffs that tend to get critiqued, but from what I've tested out with this one, I don't mind it too much. So, for those who don't know how this works, shooters will have a set amount of bullets before it paints under their feet. And for Zap, right now, this is 4 bullets. 1, 2, sorry. I think it's like 2 to 4 bullets or something like that. 2 to 4 bullets, if I remember correctly. But you can see that by the 4th bullet, it'll paint under me right now. That's how it works as a version 11.2, and that's why it looks like this. In the previous patch, I believe this range was 4 to 6, and now it is 2 to 4. So Zap much more often will paint under itself, which is of course more paint output. But most importantly, it makes it very easy to just kind of shoot at someone and then be able to move. It's still a little random, like especially in a game where you're not keeping track of what kind of fire rate cycle you're on or anything. But it's much easier to move around. I think it's fine, Generally, I think most weapons should paint under themselves a bit better, so I'm not really going to critique a change like this. I don't think it's a massive buff or anything for the weapon. I think it's very small, one of the smallest changes in the patch. But it's not a bad one, it's there. The largest change is L3, and when I reacted to this initially, I didn't really understand exactly what they were doing, but I want to kind of give some numbers on L3's stats right now, okay? So, this is L3's range after the change with its 5% increase. And this is Splattershot Pro. So if I move into Splattershot Pro's range, about here, and I switch back to L3, you'll see that it is barely less range than the Pro now. L3 is extremely close to that range value. Now, I don't know if you'd consider this mid-range or not, because typically Splattershot Pro has been kind of the baseline, the benchmark, for what counts as mid-range. But I'd say L3 might be that benchmark to me now. I think this is enough for the weapon to count as mid-range, and the reason I will say that is, compared to Pro, this weapon strafes around and it moves around much faster. I don't have any run speed or anything, which does stack well with this weapon. But even without any, you can see that it moves around fairly quickly. The other nice thing to point out about this weapon is that this 5% increase in range is also going to mean the weapon is painting more and the weapon is painting further away, which helps offset the 15% nerf that I got in the previous patch. So, this weapon got a 15% paint nerf, and I got a shot velocity buff to compensate. Now the shot velocity is like another frame faster to reach its maximum range. It has more range, and some of that paint nerf has been offset. It's still overall less than before, which is good, but it's gotten me thinking, was this change intended to go with the first two? Because when the L3 11.0 changes came out and they did the 15% nerf for extra shot velocity, that shit was just a bad trade. It was just negative. But if you combine it with this change, it kind of feels like a genuine attempt at a rework for the weapon, where the paint is being toned back, but not as drastically, and it still, retains its paint strength, but with a bit more of range added to it. And the shot velocity buff is now, with both of those combined, is, super noticeable. And then you have all the other factors of having more range. So it's with all 3 of the changes together, this now looks suddenly really smart. But they waited to do these changes, 6 months after the first 2. So I don't know why they did that, because I can't imagine there was a world in which they saw shot velocity in exchange for 15% less paint, and were like, I don't know, this might break the weapon, guys. So maybe they weren't sure if they wanted to do 3 or 5% extra range. Maybe there's a specific. I have no idea. But my current train of thought is that these were probably intended to go together. I would now say that L3 is very good paint again. I think before it was still solid after the nerf. But this is now, very, very good. Because this is just straight up really good mid-range paint. This is incredible, turf amounts. If L3 was to be the solo support of a team, I think it would be totally functional now. Furthermore, I think the range value of this weapon puts it in a really interesting position. I've kind of critiqued that this weapon and vanilla L3 with its, you know, same powerful kit have a lot of overlap that I generally dislike. But I think I now no longer have a problem with that. Mini is like closer range, a bit more mobile, a bit more consistently fast kill times, and then L3 has this range advantage that it can kind of play to, and I think that makes these weapons distinct enough in a way I really like. And L3 is also interesting to me, because I think this weapon might be really good for midline comps specifically. Because I don't really see this weapon having much synergy with the 52 stuff. The kind of burst damage that L3 relies on doesn't make it good with leader. I think this is a weapon that wants to play with, like, a bow or a pencil to me. Bow has the AoE combos with its burst bomb, but also L3 does 90 damage very frequently, and even if it misses one bullet, it's doing a lot of damage. So it really benefits off of working off other chip damage in a comp to find faster kills. So I think that bow can help a lot with that. But even better is probably pencil. Because even one hit of L3 will combo with pen if the opponents are, like, slightly weak. Like, it's not a guaranteed combo, but this in pen is 99. So if opponents are even a little bit weak, this is pretty consistent. It does make me wonder if L3 will get 32 damage in the future, because that could be a strong combo. Obviously, burst with pen is very good. But what I'm looking at more here is, like, I think the pen comps will tend to have a little bit more range than things like the leader comps. Right, because you're going to play with more mid-range teammates. You're probably still going to want a bucket. Maybe you'll want an S-Blast now with the patch changes, because S-Blast is probably, like, less nerfed than Blaster in this case. And then if you want something like a Stamper, if the Zipcaster buff ends up being more substantial than I'm thinking, right? This seems like a very good teammate for those weapons. Having Burst Bomb on a support is really good, and Splash just got made worse with the Crab change. I think that Hammer also synergizes a little bit better with pen comps right now. I'm not too high on Crab at the moment. And then outside of that, I think the fact that you have a weapon that can pair with midlines and has, like, a lot more range for both the paint and damage with them makes it a lot easier to work off those weapons. I don't know if this is something we'll see tested right away, but I'm very curious to see if L3 will kind of slot with the traditional pen double midline comp and just see if it slots in as a better support than other options, kind of in a similar role to Vimy before. But again, I think, like, the added range value of the weapon is going to be much easier to work off of for these kind of weapons. Outside of this L3, which is the main one I've been talking about, obviously, right? We have the Crab Spam L3, which is... I mean, I don't think this is worth over a Splash, but it's there. And then there is the Jetpack L3. Now, Inkjet had a bit of discussion for being not as bad as people were saying. Opinion on Jetpack was going up a bit. But the reason opinion on Inkjet was going up a bit is people thought it would be good at dealing with heavy. Like solo heavy comps or heavy paint spam comps that don't have a pen could kind of struggle at dealing with Inkjet. Like, heavy's not too good at dealing with Jetpack. But now heavy is a lot worse, as we'll get to later. So I'm not sure this L3 has much claim to fame, but it does give you a kit with a lethal bomb if you're fighting 52. So maybe. But E-liter is up and heavy is down, so I think any investment in the Inkjet stock is probably going to reset back to normal. Let's talk about Luna Blaster. So Luna Blaster's blast radius got changed, and now might be a good time for me to explain the hitbox changes for blasters, because they've said they reduced them, but we don't know by how much. It turns out the blaster radius reduction is basically just half of what the buff was. So basically it's 50% less than whatever it got in the 11.0 increase. So these are still larger than pre-11.0, but keep in mind, if you were in squid form, then obviously, you know, you have an easier time evading blaster shots anyway. So Luna Blaster's blast radius went from 4.0 to 3.9, which I think is about a fair spot for it to be in, honestly. I think you can leave its radius alone at this point. It's a 3.9, but what they changed is they reduced its jump RNG from 6 to 5.5 degrees. Which right now, if I don't have any other external abilities, still doesn't look that crazy. But Luna Blaster has another unique quality to it, which is Intensify Action stacks better with it compared to other blasters. So if you have one sub of Intensify Action, which I'm sure I have somewhere here. If you have one sub of IA, then this weapon's accuracy is really good. Like, you can look at that reticle. There really isn't much to it. And this was already the case before, but after the patch, this is, like, even more consistent. Luna Blaster can basically jump with no penalty, you know, at this point. it is very rare that a shot is going to miss when jumping. So that's very good as a mobility option for this weapon. In addition to that, it's also made 200p for Ultra Stamp. Actually, I don't know if that was this. Was this patch or the previous patch? I think it was this patch, no? Yeah, no, it is this patch. Luna got bumped up 10 points for special again. It's now 200p instead of 180p for Hammer. So Hammer is quite rare, but IA on this is going to work a little bit better. I like this little change for Luna Blaster. Again, the accuracy change makes directs feel a little bit more important, and directs consistent despite the accuracy change. Less Hammer is probably fine for other weapons performing. And given that vacuum stocks are probably going to be up, again, because we nerfed stuff like Heavy, back down, I'm willing to bet that Luna will probably be more popular than it was before, because I think this is one of the better blaster options in dealing with Ink Vacs. That, and of course, Blaster is also nerfed, and this is in close competition with it, so it's worth noting. Speaking of Blaster, I have very little say about this weapon. The one frame nerf is, like, surprisingly kind of noticeable. Like, it doesn't look like it should be. But if I, like, move around the training room as someone who's pretty used to using and fighting Blaster, yeah, it's, like, actually kind of noticeable. The AoE being smaller is also nice. It definitely feels a bit more fair. I think Blaster is probably fine at this point. Because remember, old Blaster, like, did need a buff. It did need to be a little bit better. So I think, like, between the 10 more points for special, the slight radius reduction, and all that, it's probably in a fairly normal spot at this point. I think it's in a healthy position for the game, so I don't foresee Blaster being a problem in the future. I do think it'll stay popular, especially while people are still playing comps adjacent to the old meta, and we don't know what's going to take over it yet, but not sure what'll happen later down the line. As for Rapid Blaster, and this is just for Rapid Blaster Pros, this change didn't affect normal Rapid Blaster. Also, thank you for the sub, Tiwi. I appreciate it. Right, if we talk about Rapid Blaster Pro, this weapon now has 6 more whiting frames. I believe it's now the same as X-Blow before it starts recovering ink, which is, look on its own, not the biggest change in the world. But remember, this weapon also has a slightly smaller blast radius, and we nerfed its ink efficiency recently. So, yeah, I mean... It's hard to say really much that isn't... Yeah, this weapon feels very niche at this point. It already felt really niche at this point. So, I think rapid stocks are pretty down. I hope they give something back to this weapon. Like, one more shot or something. Maybe a bit less jump RNG. I don't know. Like, I wish it would get something to make up for all these changes. I really don't know why Rapid Pro has been targeted so heavily lately. Maybe it's overperforming in tower control solo, but like... I don't know, this feels unnecessary. I don't have much to say about the other blasters that were changed. Clash is a bit more accurate, but it's not a relevant weapon. S-Blast is probably the least affected, and short-range mode is a little smaller, but people are already used to that, and the long-range mode is, like, almost impossible to notice a difference. And both normal Rapid and Range Blaster just weren't that relevant anyway, so not much to say there. Besides all the blasters, we have Heavy Splalling. So, with the numbers of the changes put together, Heavy Splalling had a 23% increase in paint before. Now I believe that number is like 6.25, like, compared to before the buffs. So Heavy does still paint better than before. It is a little bit more points for special than before. So it's better, and this is... But now it kind of feels like the paint is a mediocre buff, which is kind of unfortunate. Because I do think Heavy could have gotten some kind of interesting buff, and I was hoping if the paint was going to be toned back this much, they'd give it something a little bit more interesting. But at the end of the day, this weapon caused a lot of problems, and I can't really fault the devs for responding to this, given how much it's kind of terrorized the game in both comp and solo queue. It needed to happen. At least the weapon is still in an overall better spot than it was before. I think we'll still see it sometimes, again, especially while we don't know what the meta is going to turn into. But I don't know if we're going to really see too much of this weapon anymore after a certain period of time. And you know what? Maybe that's fine. Trizuka and Inkjet's damage to Bubble, I don't have much to say about, because Inkjet and Trizuka are simply not that relevant specials at this point. Like, they are not bad by any means, but they're not good. They're okay. They see their niche use cases, and when they see those use cases, I'm glad Bubble is less of a counter into them, but on... This change by itself, I don't think is going to do a lot. If we get, like, a Inkjet or Zuka buff later or something, then I think it could be more substantial down the line. And from a game design perspective, I still really like this change, because Bubble and Zuka felt like their matchups against... Or sorry, Jetpack and Zuka felt like their matchups against Bubble were, like, way too unbelievably horrible. And that's kind of what I said when that change happened. It's like, well, they were already bad at a Bubble. Did they really need to be, like, 30% worse? So, hey, now they're not. You know, cool. Booyah Bomb. I don't know much to say about Booyah Bomb because Platanas aren't that common. I don't think it's going to really affect too much. It's just a normal change. Splatter color screen. The screen change is a little bit more interesting than I gave it credit for. They basically increased the throw range. And you can throw this quite far now. And I think one of the main ideas behind this is if you were a screen weapon before, if you were like playing a Tri-Slosher and you put this thing down, it's pretty easy to tell where the Tri was going to be coming from because you can't throw screen very far away from you. So like even if you use it as cover, people would have a general idea of where the screen weapon was the second they threw it down. But now that you can throw it a lot further away, maybe it's a bit harder to tell where this weapon is running at you from because they could potentially be throwing it very far or be throwing it for a teammate. So, you know, it makes it a little bit easier to use, but screen still has way more problems to prevent it from being, like, actually good at this point. So it's not really something that is gonna be, like... It's not gonna be picked because of this. I do think the special, like, overall is a little bit more interesting, but it's not gonna be something that changes too much. Next up is a special where the nerf was actually a bit more significant than I thought. And someone could correct me on this either in the chat or in the comments if I'm wrong on this. But from what I've looked at, with some testing, I've seen a few videos of people who overlay footage from this. Crab's AoE change was not just an AoE change. It looks like the painting radius was also reduced. That this is a little bit smaller. And it's like barely smaller, but if I'm looking at it really carefully, I'm pretty sure this is in fact smaller. So not only does the special, like, actually have a smaller blast radius, but the paint it puts out on the floor if you're trying to do something like trap a zone or trap opponents is actually going to be more noticeably smaller. That said, I took a look at Crab's AoE radius after this change came out. Like, just the numbers for it in general. And I do have to admit, I will say, as much as I do have problems with this change, that I'm going to talk about in a bit, Crab's AoE was a little stupidly large. Like, it is kind of crazy how huge it was, and even with this change, it feels pretty fair at this point. So I honestly don't have, like, too much to really talk about here. I think it's overall okay, you know? It's a fine change design-wise. I don't think it actually hurts the special that badly. I think its power level is very similar. So, I think it's okay. That said, Crab has been dropping off for a bit. And Crab, on top of it being a bit, like, dropping off a little bit more, is also one of the harder specials to use in the game right now. There is a lot of counterplay to the special available, and a lot of simpler specials can deal with it quite well. So I understand that the special's probably changed because I think in solo it's still very strong, and in comp it's obviously still good. But I'd like to see something done to compensate. And I really don't know what is the thing. I don't know what you could give back to Crab to make it feel a bit better. My initial thought could be potentially damage reduction against some specials, but I'm not even sure what you would really do there. So I'm not sure. My other thought is maybe some of the points for special could be toned back, but like I don't even know what you could really do there. Basically, I'd like to see Crab get some kind of small buff to help out a little bit. But I don't actually know what they should give it. I think that Crab is about as good as it was before, though. Like, I don't think Crab is going to feel that much more different than it did before. Besides that, I don't have anything to say about any of the points for special changes. It's not that none of them matter. It's that none of them are that significant, you know? Like, normally these would be paired with some kind of nerf, and then it would play more of a factor. But none of the weapons that got points for special nerfs got any other type of nerf. Every points for special nerf is only a points for special nerf. The only one that's notable talking about is Dynamo, because it's stacking with another +10 and another nerf from a while ago. In which, like, yeah, that kind of sucks. You know, I think that Dynamo is not going to see much competitive use at this point. I think the best way to fix this would be buffing the vertical flick, because obviously the horizontal flick and the pain and the cooler output is very good in solo queue, is what we found out. So I think buffing the vertical flick to have a bit more coordination utility or something like that could be a good way to offset these changes while keeping the solo balance in order. But as of right now, I think Dynamo is just a very niche cooler option, which is unfortunate. I really wish it was more than that, but it is still far better than before. So, you know, it is what it is. So overall, I want to talk about one more thing. There is a lot of concern around two weapons, and this was kind of funny because I posted my video titled 11.2 did what it needed to do, and that was supposed to reference my 11.1 title, saying that it didn't do what it needed to do. But it ended up also by accident referencing Jared's video that said it did not do what it needed to do. And that's because Jared has a lot of concern around two weapons in particular that he's worried about, and he's not the only one. There's a lot of comp players that have concern about this weapon, and even a little bit about, where is it? Vacuum 96, this one. But I would say 52 and Leader are the main ones. But like this is kind of here too, but these are the two weapons people are concerned with. Leader didn't get any negative changes at all, and 52 Gal only got a slap on the wrist. So like, are these weapons going to be better or not? And the answer is, I don't know. I think that Leader is probably better and is probably the best backline in the game. But this is also what I said last patch, and then it didn't end up being the case. Heavy was absolutely better, and I was wrong on that. Like, even by the time I made my tier list, I was still thinking, oh, E-Leader's definitely the best backline in the game, and it was wrong. So will it be right this time? I don't know. Because I think the reason I was wrong about Leader last time being the best backline is because when the meta developed, pencil comps and like heavy comps and stuff ended up, you know, being able to improve a bit. Leader kind of had its best comps right away. The Leader, Tri, Vac 96, and like a Roller or a Blaster with it was kind of found out pretty much immediately, and the heavy stuff was still like, oh, I don't know what exactly we do with this. Like the first time Heavy won a tournament was with an ink brush, right? Like we didn't exactly really know what to do. So to me, this thing being really broken depends on what are the pencil comps and what are the bow comps. Are those going to be good or not now that Heavy is out of the picture and Blaster is worse? Are midline comps going to be coming back? And I forgot the Zipcaster change, right? Like, is a weapon like Stamper going to be a lot stronger? Is double midline going to be better again with something like L3 in the support slot? How is that, you know, going to work going forward, you know? And we don't know. But I think the big concern is because, you know, outside of L3, there wasn't a lot of significant buffs that compared to last time, there isn't really anything to take the spot of the things we nerfed down, which is a valid concern. But I'm not really sure if it'll be a problem or not. Vac 96 is a weapon I just don't think as negatively about. I don't think it's particularly overused. And part of that might be because Heavy was keeping it down, and now that Heavy is out of the picture, Vac 96 will be overtuned. I don't know. That's definitely possible. But I'm not terribly worried about it. I do wish it got 200p, though. I wish it had a little bit less vacuum. But right now, I think 96 is actually quite a difficult weapon. Out of all of these, 52 is probably what I'm most concerned about, because I think 52 can mesh with a lot of options. And 52 has potential to work with Leader comps. But I'm going to be honest, I'm not really super worried about 52. I could be wrong. We'll see how well this ages. But my thought right now is that 52 really liked playing with Heavy, like with the Heavy Pen Blaster stuff, because the double long-range Anchor and the double short-range Slayer would kind of force either passive gameplay where 52 could just paint, or it would force up-close interactions where its wall could do really well. And I do not think the utility it provides is as good with Leader comps as something like a 96. I think we saw 52 because it was better at dealing with like the Heavy and all that stuff. What I'm basically getting at, I think that 52 benefited a lot from like the Blaster Heavy stuff we saw, and I think if we see less Blaster Heavy stuff, then 52 will have less synergy with whatever is being picked, and will hopefully be a little bit weaker because of that. I don't know if that's actually how it'll work out, but that's my current line of thought, is that I think 52 really benefited from what was good, and it will be worse because what's good now might be things that give 52 a bit more trouble. But I don't know for sure. I also want to say that, like, I do think it's a bit of a shame that we're back to Leader, Pen, and Heavy as, like, the only good backlines. It's obviously still more than when we just had Pen, but, you know, Heavy is a question mark, and Rapid Pro keeps getting nerfed, and, I mean, this is kind of the main area where I feel buffs could have done a little bit more. We didn't do anything with, like, Ballpoint or Explo or Jet Squelcher. I mean, Wellstring got, like, 190 Seawell, that was about it. I would have liked to see more in the backline department, and it's unfortunate this thing keeps getting nerfed without any compensation. But as of right now, I would say the meta's very up in the air. The best options that have been mitigating mobility weapons and, catapulting unhealthy trends have been toned back now. So the game might open up in a more healthy way, or something else dominant might take over, and we really don't know. And I think that's kind of the thing I want to get at for a while, is I think it's going to take like another month or so before we really figure out what's good and what's not. I think there will be a lot of early reactions, a lot of very, out there reactions. I think people are going to be very worried and jump to conclusions very quickly. But if 11.0 taught me anything, it's that it's going to probably take a little bit before we figure out exactly what's good. So now is probably a good time to experiment. And by now, I mean after NA League. Because none of the NA teams are going to be doing any form of experimentation when they have a finals match a week from now. So, I don't think we're going to see too much different yet. But I'm very curious to see what happens later. That's all my thoughts, though. I still like this patch. I'm very curious to see what happens next. Thank you for watching.